The elected one, they want to corner you. But the truth is coming out. Hands you don't see are working behind the scenes. Whispers echo in dark rooms. Plans are being devised insidiously. They want to silence you, prevent you, destroy you. But there is something they don't realize. You are not an ordinary person. You are a chosen one. Until today, you have been the target of false friendships, secret conspiracies, and games behind your back. They have tried every way to defame you, to smear your name, even to make you look like a criminal. But there is one thing they do not know. The truth is always revealed. No matter how thick the darkness is, the light always pierces it. The more they try to silence you, the higher you rise. As they set their traps, you watch how the plan of divine justice works. They are trying to put you in jail, to make you lose, to overthrow you. But what they don't know is that there is not only human power behind you, but divine power. Truth is protecting you. Justice is on your side. You are the one who will spoil this game. As long as you stand on the right, their false empires will fall. Their schemes will turn into the pit they dug with their own hands. Truth is destined to win, chosen one. As your name rises, their schemes will crumble. Now get ready and write 77 in the comments, for the time of divine reckoning is approaching. A veil of secrecy hung heavy in the dimly lit chamber, where hushed voices intertwined like tangled threads in a vast, deceptive web. A gathering of concealed figures wove intricate schemes, believing their whispers would dissolve into the night, unheard and unseen. Yet destiny had other intentions. Every veiled threat, every strategic maneuver, every act of malice aimed at an unsuspecting soul did not vanish into obscurity. An unseen observer, a silent witness, absorbed each fragment of the plot. The gravity of the moment was undeniable. This was no casual discussion, no fleeting exchange of words. It was the countdown to an inevitable reckoning, and the moment of truth had already begun to unfold. The alarm had been sounded, and the once private discourse now stood exposed under an unforgiving light. What had been spoken with unshaken confidence, hidden beneath layers of deception, had already slipped through the cracks. The conspirators, cloaked in their own arrogance, never fathomed that their plans were no longer just ideas confined to the shadows. A name had surfaced, at first a mere utterance, then a repeated chant that gained momentum, laced with unspoken intent. This was not idle speculation, not a fleeting grievance. It was the foundation of an orchestrated downfall. The discussion did not revolve around abstract notions. It was a meticulous script, drafted with precision, designed to dismantle, to sabotage, to destroy. Their words sharpened, their intentions solidified into something far more insidious. No longer was this a gathering of grievances. It was a war council. Every action was plotted with the precision of a strategist shaping the course of a battle. Would they craft an illusion, distorting perception to frame their target? Would they weave a narrative so compelling that allies would unwittingly become adversaries? Or would their machinations reach further, plunging into realms of deception so deep that trust itself became a casualty? There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in their voices. They spoke as if this was routine, as if their method had been tested, perfected, and proven effective. To them, the target was just another obstacle in a long line of eliminated threats. And then came the moment of divergence, the misstep they failed to perceive. A name entered the conversation, one that could be swayed, bent, molded into a pawn within their intricate design. A fabricated truth emerged, carefully sculpted, engineered for maximum impact. This was no longer conjecture. It had transformed into a definitive act of intent. The weight of their words sealed their fate, their confidence blinding them to the reality that the very sentences they wove would soon become chains binding their own downfall. They reveled in their own ingenuity, mocking the one they sought to dismantle, laughing at the pain they intended to inflict. They mistook their recklessness for invincibility, their secrecy for security. But unseen eyes had already captured every word. A shift in the air signaled the unseen, an imperceptible tremor that sent ripples through their false sense of control. The once steady cadence of conversation faltered, a hesitation blooming between breaths. A glance exchanged, a sudden stillness. A primal instinct whispered that something was amiss. Paranoia took form in glances over shoulders, in fingertips drumming nervously against the table. Silence swelled, speaking louder than words. Had they been careless? Had the fortress of secrecy they built so carefully already begun to crumble? An unease spread among them, the first unspoken admission of doubt. A figure, unnoticed and silent, had been present where they should not have been. Was it chance? A misstep of fate? Or had fate, in its silent orchestration, ensured their presence? The weight of unintentional discovery pressed upon them, every detail of the plot, now embedded in their mind, inescapable, unforgettable. They had not sought this knowledge, yet it had been thrust upon them. And now, an impossible choice loomed before them. To walk away, burying the truth, allowing events to unfold untouched, or to act, to risk everything, to thrust the hidden into the open. If you feel the abundance of divine love in your heart, now is the time to share it. You can help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and contributing $20 or more. This divine gift will touch not only your life, but the souls of many through this platform. Each of you has a sacred place in God's grand design, and your generosity will be the fruit of our prayers. Act now. Share your blessings to glorify His kingdom, for you were created to do even greater things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. A storm of uncertainty raged within them. If they remained silent, the deception would succeed, unchecked and unchallenged. If they intervened, they risked drawing the storm upon themselves. Doubt clawed at them. Would their warning be heeded or dismissed? Would they be cast as an agitator, an unwanted disruption to a machine already in motion? And worst of all, if the architects of this scheme learned of their knowledge, would they too become a target? The easy path was silence. But silence had a cost, and that cost bore the weight of another's destruction. The truth, like a burden made of lead, sat heavy on their soul. And in that moment, with breath held and resolve forming, they made their decision. A truth too heavy to ignore settled in their mind like an anchor dropped into deep waters. The easiest escape was silence, to feign ignorance and let time erase the memory. Yet, the more they tried to push it away, the more it clawed its way back. The words spoken in that concealed gathering refused to fade, echoing like an unrelenting drumbeat. And then there was the name that made it impossible to walk away. This wasn't a distant conflict, a faceless manipulation. This was real, immediate, and dangerously close. Their mind wrestled with the weight of it all, but their heart had already decided. Some choices burn into the soul, leaving no room for retreat. There was no turning back. The shift had begun the moment they spoke up, yet they only realized its magnitude after the words had left their mouth. A silent war, hidden behind closed doors, had existed long before this night. The web of deception was old, its architects well practiced in the art of destruction. Names had fallen before, quietly erased, lives dismantled without warning. It had always seemed like an accident, an unfortunate twist of fate. But patterns do not emerge from coincidence, and chaos does not move with such precision. The past was now visible in ways it never had been before. Those who had vanished from the scene had not stumbled into misfortune. They had been guided there by unseen hands, just as another was being led toward ruin now. For too long, their game had played out flawlessly, a performance without interruption. They left no trails, no tangible proof, only the aftermath of their whispers. They built narratives like sculptors chiseling away at marble, shaping stories with careful precision. No fingerprints, no evidence, just fractures in the lives of those they selected. They chose their marks wisely, trusting, unsuspecting, unprepared. By the time their work was done, those who had once stood tall found themselves isolated, discredited, erased. The orchestrators remained unseen, their influence lingering, like an invisible hand pressing down on the lives they shattered. This time, however, their steps had left imprints. Their voices had found an unintended audience. They had spent years refining their art, believing it to be foolproof, untouchable. But even the most flawless design can be undone by an unforeseen flaw. This was no longer a single act of deception. It was an entire system exposed to the light. The weight of its implications was crushing. If no one had ever stopped them before, how many had already been consumed by their machinations? How many futures had been rewritten before they had even begun? This was not just a plan. It was a machine, operating in plain sight, unnoticed until now. The witness had become more than an observer. They were now the first crack in an unbreakable wall. No longer was this just about one person, one target. It was about something much larger, something more insidious. The very ground beneath the schemers was shifting, the security they had built for themselves crumbling under an unseen force. Their strength had always been their secrecy, their ability to remain just beyond reach. But now, for the first time, someone was watching them. Someone was pulling back the curtain. Once the call was made, the sequence of events could not be undone. What had been whispered in secrecy was now recorded in permanent ink. There was no stopping the flood once the first drop had fallen. Every syllable spoken in the dark was now under scrutiny, every step they had taken being retraced. Names, places, conversations, everything was unraveling. The inquiry began in the shadows, its presence subtle but deliberate. But a fire, once ignited, does not smolder for long. It spreads, consuming everything in its path. They moved without knowledge of what was coming, still shielded by the illusion of control. Their voices carried on, their confidence unwavering. But their fortress had already begun to collapse, brick by brick. What they had spoken so freely had turned against them. The very tools they had wielded against others, manipulation, secrecy, deception, had become the very things that would betray them. The weight of their past was pressing in, and they had yet to realize it. The cracks deepened with the first knock on a door, the first unexpected call, the first question that did not feel like a coincidence. The first among them to sense it couldn't quite name what was wrong, only that something had shifted. A glance too long, an absence too sudden, a conversation cut short. Small details they had once overlooked were now impossible to ignore. The certainty they had held so firmly began to waver, replaced by an unfamiliar sensation. Doubt, the quiet knowledge that something unseen was working against them. The certainty they had relied upon was no longer unshaken. Something had changed, and it was too late to stop it. A shift had begun, subtle at first, like a faint crack in a mirror that suddenly splintered in every direction. The usual routines faltered, calls went unanswered, plans dissolved without explanation, and words that once flowed freely were now laced with hesitation. Messages were sent into the void, met with eerie silence. A creeping unease settled over them, a silent whisper of something they couldn't quite name. They retraced their steps, scanning memories like a broken reel of film, searching for the moment when control had slipped through their fingers. Someone had learned the truth, but who? Their certainty shattered, replaced by a creeping, gnawing suspicion. The walls around them were closing in, but they had no idea where the first crack had formed. Panic breeds desperation, and desperation leads to reckless decisions. They gathered under a different kind of silence this time, one not of secrecy, but of mistrust. Eyes darted across the room, searching for the traitor among them. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken, until someone dared to give it voice. Who betrayed us? The air thickened, tension coiling like a storm about to break. Denials came fast, too fast, but the damage had already been done. Suspicion was a poison that seeped into every corner of the room, their unity fractured, their shared confidence corroded by fear. They scrambled to erase their past, wiping away messages, erasing records, rewriting events in their minds. But truth is not so easily undone. It lingers, like ink on a page that no fire can fully consume. The foundation they had built was no longer solid. It was crumbling, piece by piece, and there was no stopping its collapse. Then came the moment that shattered their illusion entirely. The first, arrest. A single domino tipping forward, setting off a cascade they could no longer outrun. The second came swiftly after, and in that instant, the facade fell away. The empire of deception they had so carefully constructed had been built on sand, and the tide was rushing in. Panic took hold. Some tried to run, clinging to the delusion that they could escape the inevitable. Others pleaded, grasping at excuses that could not erase the undeniable weight of evidence. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth had been set loose, and there was no returning it to the shadows. Records, testimonies, undeniable proof. Every secret they had buried was now unearthed for all to see. The whispers they had once controlled had turned against them, echoing through every headline, exposing their every move. Just as the first light of dawn, gentle yet relentless, dissipates the heavy shadows of a long, cold night, so does truth burst forth to expose the hidden transgressions of those who once held sway. In the quiet hours, when hearts should be calm and minds at rest, an unmistakable clarity emerges, revealing that all false power crumbles beneath the weight of divine justice. It is a truth that resonates deep within the soul, much like the steady, assuring words of a trusted preacher, reminding us that no act of deception can forever veil the light of righteousness. There was no honor in their fall, no dignity in their defeat. Those who had once wielded control now sat powerless, reduced to nothing but desperate voices behind cold interrogation walls. Accusations flew, alliances dissolved in an instant, and the loyalty they had feigned for years crumbled like ash in the wind. Each tried to sacrifice the other, to shift the weight of guilt in a futile attempt to lighten their own burden. But it was all meaningless. Their power had never been real, only borrowed, only temporary. One by one, they fell, stripped of status, of reputation, of everything they had used to shield themselves. Some lost more than their names, they lost their families, their futures, their freedom. Because deception may buy time, but it never guarantees safety. And justice, once awakened, does not rest until every debt is paid. The journey of their downfall began with subtle missteps, calls left unanswered, plans abruptly scrapped, and conversations halted mid-thought. It was as if the very air around them grew heavy with an unseen force, a divine reckoning that could not be ignored. When the first message returned with silence and the next phone call was swallowed by an unyielding void, it became evident that something was gravely amiss. They retraced every step of their secret meeting, every whispered word, and every carefully laid plan, searching desperately for the moment when their control began to slip away. In that relentless quest for accountability, every fleeting hesitation, every unexplained pause, spoke louder than any protest they might have mounted. The silence was a testimony to their undoing, a divine sign that no evil scheme can endure forever. As the murmur of uncertainty turned into a resounding alarm, panic started to spread like wildfire. The atmosphere in every secluded room shifted. What once was confident assurance was now replaced by nervous glances and furtive whispers. The conspirators, who had so long danced with the idea of their invincibility, now found themselves trapped in a labyrinth of their own making. Every alliance they had crafted out of convenience dissolved under the harsh light of scrutiny. Trust, once manufactured and paraded as strength, melted away into a haze of suspicion and regret. In this moment of reckoning, every person present became both the hunter and the hunted, caught in a web of their own design. The very systems they had built to safeguard their secrets were now crumbling, piece by piece, exposing every hidden fault and every carefully concealed lie. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be upon you today. I am here to remind you of a profound truth. Our existence is grounded in God's divine plan, unshaken by the temporal concerns of the world. As the Bible says, whatever is done in faith will return to God in abundant blessing. Luke 6:38. Like that great oak tree, our roots are deeply rooted in God's universal truth. Every step we take, every stand we take, is secured by His strength. And now, you are being offered the opportunity to be part of that blessing. When you use the Super Thank You button and donate $100, this movement will return to you 100-fold in abundance. When the inevitable day of accountability arrived, it was as though the scales of justice, long unbalanced in their favor, had finally found their true measure. One arrest followed another, each serving as a stark reminder that no one is immune to the long arm of accountability. The mighty fell in quick succession, their once proud names reduced to nothing more than whispers of regret. Some sought to run, desperately clinging to the illusion that they might escape the consequences of their deceit. Others resorted to frantic pleas and hasty confessions, their voices trembling under the pressure of overwhelming evidence. Yet no amount of denial or delay could halt the inexorable advance of truth. Records, testimonies, and undeniable proof emerged from every corner, leaving no room for the smug arrogance that had once shielded them. The meticulous construction of their power, built on shifting sands of false promises, now lay in ruins under the scrutiny of a justice that refused to be silenced. In the cold glare of a courtroom, where once their influence had been unquestioned, those responsible for the betrayal found themselves utterly exposed. The final pronouncement of guilt was not a mere formality, it was the shattering of a once formidable illusion. For every stolen moment and every whispered conspiracy, there was now an irrefutable reckoning. The court's verdict, delivered with the solemnity of inevitable fate, echoed through the chamber, marking the end of an era built on deceit. Fines were levied, reputations were forever tarnished, and some even found themselves behind cold, unyielding bars. What had once been a tapestry of carefully woven lies now unraveled completely, leaving nothing but stark, painful truth in its wake. And in the aftermath of their downfall, those who had once reveled in their perceived supremacy were met not with sympathy, but with a profound sense of poetic justice. The very people they had sought to manipulate now looked upon them with a mixture of disbelief and relief. The power that had been so desperately clung to turned out to be as fleeting as a shadow at noon. There was no redemption to be found in the ruins of their empire, no last-minute rescue from the consequences of their own misdeeds. Their downfall was complete, a lesson in the impermanence of false authority and the unstoppable force of genuine righteousness. Indeed, the lesson remains clear. True power is not derived from the exploitation of others or the maintenance of a fragile, illusory control. It is born from honesty, built upon a foundation of integrity and nurtured by a commitment to justice that is as unyielding as it is eternal. The demise of these would-be tyrants stands as a testament to the enduring strength of truth. In the end, the spirit of righteousness prevails, outlasting even the darkest schemes and the most cunning deceptions. And so we are reminded, time and again, that no matter how high one may soar on borrowed wings, the inevitable return to humility is certain when the light of justice shines forth. For those who remain steadfast in their commitment to honesty and virtue, let this be a clarion call. Every act of deception, no matter how small, will eventually be revealed. In the grand tapestry of life, every thread of falsehood is eventually unraveled, and every lie is exposed under the unwavering gaze of truth. As we journey forward, let us hold fast to the knowledge that our integrity is our true strength, a beacon of hope in a world too often clouded by deceit. May we always remember that while the forces of darkness may occasionally gather in secret, the light of justice, once ignited, burns brighter than any false power ever could. In this unfolding drama of life, the fall of those who abuse their power is not merely an isolated event, but a universal truth that reaffirms our shared commitment to what is right. And as we reflect on their inevitable downfall, we are called to embrace a future where truth reigns supreme. A future where the light of justice dispels every shadow of corruption, leaving behind only the enduring promise of a better, more honest tomorrow. Now is the time to share God's blessings. By clicking the super thank you button on YouTube, you can contribute to His plan and be a part of this divine mission with a donation of $100 or more. Every gift reflects God's generosity, and I believe it will return to you exponentially far beyond your expectations. Remember, His protection and blessing is on your every step and every donation. You become part of His divine plan. You are a strong, radiant being, unshakable as His mighty rock. Witness God's miracles, feel the fruits of your generosity in your soul, and illuminate the world with confidence and courage. Be blessed and let the light of the Lord guide your path. The reckoning reached its final act, a courtroom filled with silence that spoke louder than any verdict. The word came swift and absolute, a sound that echoed with the weight of finality. Guilty. The sentence was not just words on paper. It was the severing of their carefully woven web, the destruction of all they had built. Some walked away, with nothing but ruin in their wake, stripped of titles, of wealth, of influence. Others were bound in iron, their fates sealed by the very system they had sought to manipulate. They had once believed themselves untouchable, hidden within their own carefully drawn shadows. But no veil is impenetrable, no lie eternal. The past is never buried forever. It waits, patient and relentless, until the moment comes for it to rise. And rise it did. The fear they had once inspired turned to laughter. The very people they had sought to control now watched them fall, not with sympathy, but with relief. There would be no mercy, not because vengeance was sought, but because truth does not bend for those who deny it. They had tried to erase others, yet in the end, they had erased themselves. They had crafted their own demise with the same hands they had used to dismantle others. No matter how many precautions they had taken, no matter how carefully they had orchestrated their deception, one simple fact remained. The truth endures, and it always wins.